Well, I'm excited to be joined by Indiana's new Secretary of Commerce, Brad Chambers. Brad, congratulations on your appointment by Governor Holcomb.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Every day is an adventure right now, but I certainly appreciate being invited, and I'm excited to talk to you about Indiana's future from a commerce perspective.
Brad, what made this particular opportunity attractive enough to leave your company for a period of time? I know that company and the Buckingham is a passion of yours, and you've done incredible work over the last few decades. Tell us a little bit about why you made the decision to take a leave of absence.
Great, thank you. You know, it was a thoughtful deliberation, and as Earl Good said the other day, my initial reaction is I can't do it. Our business is active and busy, and I'm still very involved. And I let that marinate and ruminated over that a bit, and then I came back to it, and I'm nothing is ever the perfect time, I think, is in our lives, right? Our company DNA has a very serious community focus to it. And so as I looked at the DNA and values of our company, my personal values, and put all that together, and then I looked at the team I'd be working with, Governor Holcomb and his senior staff, in the condition of the state, which is really excellent from a fiscal perspective, and the opportunities ahead, and how my skills could be accretive there. I changed my mind, and so that's as simple as it is, and that's the thought process. And it took me a while to get there, and you were, as a former Secretary of Commerce, you understand the role, and you were super to help me through that thought process as well.
Is this a full-time role, or will you still have some involvement with your company, Brad?
Yeah, it was important that I have a really candid conversation with the governor and his team, and you can't just go from 100 to 0, right? And so there is going to be a period of time where I'm still going to have to be involved here and titrate down over time. But on the other hand, the other benefit is I've got an enormously talented team here. A lot of them have been with me for a long time. I've been with the company, and they're great leaders. And this is gonna provide room for them to shine as well. And that's exciting for me to watch. So the answer is yes. I'm going to continue to have some involvement, but over time, we'll see how much I can fully pull back.
And I noticed in the announcement that it's a 2-year commitment. Is that I know some people, one of our predecessors, Mickey Maurer, said 2 years and only 2 years. Are you
right.
more than that, or are you kind of going in a similar way?
Well, I hope first of all, I think it puts pressure on me to perform, right? Business, as you know, Nate, is one of the most important ingredients is a sense of urgency. And government doesn't always have that sense of urgency. And so I think the 2 years is putting a marker out there for me to get a lot done as much as I can, and keep that urgency for the state and the people of the state. I think it's a good time frame for me to put out there, but you never say never. So if we get to that point and they're not tossing me out of the office, and we're achieving some of our goals, I'll certainly be open to thinking about some more time.
I want to turn to a big opportunity in my mind, and that's the amount of money that the governor and the legislature have set aside, $500 million for a regional economic development program called the READY program. And my understanding, kind of reading some of the intent behind that program, was to really put a focus on the development of locations, or placemaking, as some would say, as well as talent initiatives, talent attraction, talent retention. How do you look at this program in terms of how it should be used, and what kind of opportunity you think this might present for our state?
Yeah, great question. And it's a really, and as you can imagine, coming from the background that I come from, to have that kind of commitment to statewide development of live, work, play infrastructure. It's pretty exciting for me. And again, it fits my skill set. So, the READY program is an extension of the Regional Cities program that's been successful throughout our state. And it really is more than a $500 million commitment, because with leverage and community partnerships and so forth and so on, that is somewhere between $2 and $5 billion of economic impact, which is material. And this is a statewide program, north to south, east to west, and we encourage all the communities within the state to think creatively, to lean into live, work, and play, and how these funds can turn their communities into more attractive places for all of that. I will tell you, coming out of the pandemic, there's been a lot of introspection with the entire United States workforce, right? I mean, as you know, I think my work practices are different than they were a year ago, probably yours are too. But there's investment bankers in New York that are working from a farm in Nebraska, right? There's tech people who we're in Austin, or sitting somewhere that is not Nebraska. And so Indiana is as competitive a place. We just gotta tell people that, and we gotta invest in that. And I think that's what the READY program is.
So do you think the talent piece, and you kind of referenced that, the talent piece of this, is that going to be a big part of the IEDC's efforts in terms of course, traditionally the IEDC has been very transactional oriented, and using state incentives and so forth. How do you see, maybe given this program and some of your thoughts and ideas, the talent piece coming into play for our state?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We have been very transactional, and with lots of conversation with the governor on this. I think we want to be more qualitative versus transactional, quality over quantity, and as we go forward and evaluate the opportunity to build our economy. Job announcements are terrific, and we are so competitive in that regard. I think this year they're going to set another record, and I have nothing to do with that. But it's been robust. The question is that the right metric, right? Is it GDP output, or is it pick a metric? What's the right metric? Is it average wage? I think average wage is one of those things we need to work on. And so there's that introspection, that analysis, and that strategy that's going on right now regarding what the future of Indiana economic development looks like. At the same time, as every day you got to work with these great employers throughout the state and help them along. So I do think it's qualitative. I do think it is recruiting and workforce. I think it's workforce. Is it the chicken or the egg, right? In my opinion, it's somewhat the chicken, and that you've got to have a young, energetic, educated, hardworking workforce, and that is what the READY program speaks to. And with that, I think industry will come as well, and maybe the industry we want for the next 50 years.
So you talked a little bit about perhaps a little bit of a change in focus for the IEDC under your leadership. I know you said you can't ignore those opportunities that we historically have done well at and we're well positioned for. But do you see maybe a shifting priority list for you and your team when you get started from what historically has been done over the last 16 years or so?
Yeah, it'll take some time. I've got to find out where my office and desk is first. But you're right, it will take some time. But yes, I do think it's time to just any business, your business, our business. Change is a good thing. Reevaluation of what the marketplace is doing, reevaluation of what we're doing vis-a-vis the marketplace. And I think this is a great time. Indiana is leading from strength, as you know. The governor and his leadership, and Todd Houston and the legislative leadership, man, did they do a great job through this pandemic. And we are so fiscally strong. We've got great energy. And it is a good time to play to those strengths and But to do that, I don't think we use the old playbook. I don't think, at least we assume we're going to use that old playbook, right? Let's look at the playbook and see if there's some new plays we should put in, and I think that's what we want to do.
I know in your career and your work as a developer, your work extends outside the state, and I know
Right.
you've done some great projects that are multi-use and are, I would call, maybe a talent attraction type of projects.
That's right.
I know that inherently you'll bring some of that to bear in the job.
Right.
How do you see those experiences, maybe even experiences outside the state where maybe you picked up an idea or two? How do you see some of your experiences playing out in your thoughts and ideas and priorities?
People, especially our young people, millennials, right? They want they're different than we are, and you and I are, in the period that we grew up in, and their values are slightly different. And they're not bad or good. They're just different. They value outdoor space, and they value creative space, and they don't, and then maybe they put a little less value on an office tower, right? Or things that we did. So we have got to lead with that in mind and invest with that in mind, to be able to, what's really important for me is the 75,000 a year college graduates. Where are they going? And we want to keep them here, and so we've got to create an environment that's interesting to them for that exact thing.
When I served in this role, Brad, I always thought that we were missing an opportunity to really tell the story to all the young people who are coming into our great universities, colleges and universities across the state, and missing an opportunity to really market the state to them, connect them to employers.
The retention is a super important issue, and that's on my to-do list. We'll want to engage with university leadership throughout the state and really study these young people and ask them questions about what's important to you and how can Indiana be your home. And we're going to do that. And because we don't want to just think we know, we've got to research it, and we got to really know what's important to these college graduates. And then my hope is to put in initiatives and plans and use our IDC toolkit that makes it interesting for them to stay. That's number one. The other part of the future, at least in my 2 years, I hope, is of the 75,000 that graduate from Indiana schools, there's some statistics out there that say 60% of those want to start their own businesses. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
And the old adage that within the 10 years, I think within the first 10 years, 90% of those would fail. But that 10% is still 7,000 or 8,000 businesses a year that can succeed if we water those seeds of entrepreneurship. And that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And so the governor's supportive of creating a stronger, unified entrepreneurial ecosystem in the state and making us a nationally recognized landing pad for entrepreneurs. I think we do a pretty good job of that right now, to be honest with you, and I don't think anybody knows it. Yeah. And so telling that story, connecting more dots and creating that ecosystem that people are aware of, I think is another tool so we're investing in place through Ready. We're going to be doing research and homework on the college graduates, and then we're going to give those 60% who are interested in starting a new business some tools to do that.
There's a legislation that just passed the Senate, hasn't passed the House yet, that's sponsored by our Senator Todd Young, along with Senator Schumer, called the Endless Frontier Act, which is the proposition that there'll be a $10 billion fund to create regional tech hubs across the United States. And in some ways, many would argue that's how Silicon Valley and Boston and Austin became tech hubs, because some major funding that came from the federal government. How do you view, assuming this passes, which I think it has a decent chance of happening, I don't know until it actually becomes law, but how do you see the IEDC and you being involved in that effort if that does pass?
Well, first and foremost, that's really a big accomplishment for Senator Young, to be a co-lead on a really important bill that's going to have a lot of resources and a lot of eyes on it. That's really important nationally as we look on a national basis and how are we going to compete with some of our our global competitors. So it's a super important, super thoughtful bill, and we're super fortunate to have an Indiana senator at the helm of that. That said, I know we as a state have to put our best foot forward, right? I don't think we can take anything for granted with that. And the wheels are already turning at the IEDC on how we can do exactly that. I think that our city and our state is pretty good at this stuff. And we got a great team at the IEDC. And so they're already brainstorming on how we can be authentically competitive and uniquely competitive, such that we would win one of those regional spots in the Endless Frontiers Act. So I think it's very important for us.
As you, I'm sure, are aware, your predecessor and someone who just stepped down from your role, Secretary Schellinger, spent a lot of his efforts overseas and
right.
nationally, and making connections, and the governor, of course, has spent a lot of his time and effort on that front as well, with some positive results to show for it. How do you see? I can maybe ask it this way: do you see continuing on that focus, international engagement focus, and as many trips overseas to meet with executives, or how do you plan to kind of allocate your time in that regard?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've been super fortunate in Indiana to have not only great governors in our history, but we've had, you included, really good secretaries of commerce, and they've all had unique and important impacts on how our state has competed and continued to evolve economically. So, but as I said, everybody's leadership's a little unique. I probably will take a little bit of a different approach than Secretary Schellinger. He was fantastic, and under his leadership, foreign direct investment, I think the number is, don't hold me to this, but I think it tripled, or it was 100 or 200, 300% increase. It was significant. And so I think there was a real, return on that investment of his travel. I'm not sure that will be exactly my approach. We're going to have to spend some time on what the toolkit looks like and who it's targeting. That's the other thing we didn't talk about is, the current targets for our economic tools probably need to be evaluated, and it needs to be evaluated in the context of what do we want the economy to look like, in 2070, right, or 2050. And it may have a pretty important foreign domestic investment component to it. But there's a lot of people that are super sharp at IEDC that can travel and make that happen. It doesn't always have to be me. So, long story too long, but we're not turning away from that, because those are important foreign investors in our economy. But I will probably not travel as much.
You referenced something that I find really interesting and happen to agree with, which is, our toolkit, the state's toolkit, really hasn't had a revamp in the last couple of decades, and yet our world has changed dramatically, where people are voting with their feet, as you kind of alluded to earlier. Young people especially are voting with their feet, and how do we attract and start thinking about people, remote workers, versus thinking about companies, which historically, have been the job creators, of course, and the bigger job creators. But we also know that small businesses are really the driver of our economy across this country. They employ more than any any other sector.
Right.
I know you're just getting started in the job, but thinking about that dichotomy and thinking about the potential legislative changes going into the next session, it sounds like is on your your to-do list to evaluate.
It is absolutely on the to-do list, and we got to hurry. But I get to your exact point. If you look at the Indiana economy today, it was the entrepreneurs of yesterday that are driving our economy as much as it is our new business participants, right? I used an example earlier. There's no better example of an entrepreneur, who's created a dynamic company that's has really well-paying jobs, driving innovation, than a person that started their company 125 years ago, right? And his name is Colonel Eli Lilly, right? And then you've got tons of other examples that are these, Simon, right? Kite Realty Group Trust. You've got the Glick family, Car International, the automotive business that continues to innovate. Zotec. I mean, those are all local entrepreneurs that are doing and contributing to our economy. And so we want to, as much as invite people to our economy from outside of Indiana, we want to make sure we're supporting the next Zotec or the next Eli Lilly.
I'm going to ask you maybe a difficult question, but somewhat a question you probably thought a little bit about. But the question is, what does success look like after 2 years at the helm of Indiana's economic development efforts?
It's a question that I'm assuming is going to come back to me in about 23 months.
Exactly.
If we can make meaningful changes in policy, procedure, the way we act and conduct ourselves, such that the entrepreneurial landscape is noticeably different in 2 years, I'll be pleased. Now, are we going to get all the way there? Probably not. But if it's easier to be an entrepreneur in our state because of the work we've done in 2 years, I'll be pleased. If the average wage that is going on and being paid out to Indiana workers goes up meaningfully in the next 2 years, I'll be pleased. If it's at or closer to the national average, I'll be pleased. If the READY program has invested and generated, $2, $3, $4, $5 billion of economic development, and you can drive through communities in Gary and Fort Wayne and LaPel and Evansville and Jasper and Seymour and Noblesville, and you can feel the investment through business parks and retail storefronts and park infrastructure, I'll be pleased. If we are a little more progressive in the way we view consumption of energy, and if we are a leader in the energy transition, I'll be pleased. And so that's enough. I don't want to be judged by any more than that.
Those are all big targets and a lot to try to accomplish. But you're right. If you can even get us going on that track and see that there's an opportunity to continue to grow and move in those directions, that has an opportunity to really shift positively our state's economy and people's lives in our state. So those are great objectives, and I hope that you are successful in achieving them, because that would be a wonderful legacy and accomplishment.
Well, thank you. I want to reframe that. Me being pleased isn't really the litmus test here. I'm self-competitive, and I want to help. This is a civic opportunity, right? I've made a decision to do this for civic purposes, as we talked about. But it's not really me. It's you, and it's the governor, and it's the taxpayers and the citizens of the state. If it's noticeable that we've made some progress, then I can look back and say, that's been a good contribution. So, knocking on wood that we can get there with some urgency. We need some urgency.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Well, Brad, can't thank you enough for spending time with us today and sharing your thoughts as you get started. And I know you'll once you get in the seat and you really get going, it'll be fun to catch up with you again. So thank you.
You got it.